Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Azad Ali. I'm the Director Admissions at Jindal School of Art and Architecture. Today, at this opportunity, we have Professor Dr. Jaideep Chatterjee. Is the Vice Dean of Jindal School of Art and Architecture. I'll hand over the session to Dr. Chatterjee in a few minutes. Before that, let me introduce him. He has completed his PhD from University of Cornell once. And the second PhD he has done in the history of architecture and urbanism, again from University of Cornell. Before that, his Master of Architecture, that's MArch, he has completed from University of Cincinnati. So here, introducing Mr. Chatterjee. Here you go, sir.
Of yourself. All right. Today's, today we're going to talk a little bit about something that we've been thinking about in the school for a while, and that is actually what the title of the topic is. And I'm going to share that screen with you in a second. It is, do architects have a role to play in the prevention of pandemics? Right. So the good news is, yes, we do, all right? However, here's the thing, the bad news, all right, is not if we keep training them as an architect in the same way that we have in this country for the last 70 years, right? Let me explain what I mean by that. Typically, how architects have been trained ever since the 1970s, when one started having the Formal Architects Act of India, it's been treating architecture as an isolated subject, right? Treating our buildings and our built environment, our cities, our towns, our parks, our places, all of that as a kind of isolated thing. A great example of this is, like everything in India, the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. So, you have architects who have to work with, let's say a city planner, but nobody knows what is happening, right? What we've been thinking about is that this idea of architecture actually has to change, and in fact, it's changed in many places in the world, not so much in India. But how has it changed, right? Let me try to explain that to you as quickly as I can. What you see in front of you is actually a very famous graphic by a theorist called Stuart Brand, who wrote this wonderful book, if you can ever get your hands on it. It's called How Buildings Learn. Now, Brand made the following argument, right? I mean, he said that you've got to understand architecture, buildings, our cities, all of this is actually as a form of system design, as a form of system thinking, right? And what he says is that if you take any building, right, any particular building, any building that you have in mind, any city, any one of these places that you have in mind, there's 6 kind of systems or layers which are constantly intermingling, all right? So there's the layer of the stuff, there's the layer of the space, there's the layer of services, there's the layer of the skin, there's the layer of structure, and there's the layer of site. And just briefly, I'll tell you, by stuff we mean all the things that we use in our everyday life. So, I'm using a laptop which is sitting on a chair. I'm sitting on a chair which is kept on a table. I'm writing with a pen. I'm talking to you. I'm using the. So these are stuff that we deal with all the time, right? Then there is a spatial system, right? How we use space, how we produce space, right? How every time, so for anything that we do, we need a certain space. every building also has a huge number of services, all right? So, very simply, there's a mechanical service, there's an electrical system that's going on, there's a plumbing system that's going on, there's communicational system that's going on, right? All of these are kind of layered onto each other, right? Then we come to what's called the skin, right? The skin of a building, right? The skin of a city, the skin of an institution, the skin of a park. This is the interface of that place with that which lies outside of it, right? And then there's the structural system, which is the infrastructure, right? Which is also the beams, columns, the water systems, right? The piping systems, all of these are part of that. And then there's the site. By site, it's just not the place where it is located, but the site is actually the most important thing, because the site is the legal place, right? The site is the policy which is governed, where you locate your building, right? Where you locate a city, where you locate a place, where you design a place. And architecture, right, is fundamentally, as more and more we are beginning to know, is actually something like an information system, right? It's because information from all of these things are constantly talking to each other, right? And it's constantly, having a kind of a conversation, taking back and forth from each other, and always in relation with each other, right? However, this is not how it has been taught, right? It has been taught very, very differently, okay? How do we change this system, right? And this is what we've been trying to do at the JSAA, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a glimpse of what is it that we've been doing, all right? So what we try to do is that if this is how we need to produce architects, the kind of architects who are actually plugged into different systems of knowledge and information and are able to think systemically, are able to think in a layered, networked sense, the answer lies in trying to understand the kind of skills we need. So what are the skills we need, all right? So one, the skills that are required for the design and management of infrastructure, which includes how do transportation work, right? How does urban health and sanitation, right? How does pedestrian friendly, crowdsourced development, disaster mitigation, construction management, right? These are the kind of skills that you need. There's also skills which are required in the public and private development sector. So then there's question of policies, right? There are legal codes, there's development issues, there's what's called building information modeling that's required, right? Then there's the kind of skills that you need, which are for the development of discourse on the question of architecture, right? So there's kind of ecological assessments, historical assessments, sociological assessments, right? In non-human, human ecologies, digital reconstructions of heritages and things like that, right? And of course, there is the question of design build, right? The traditional skills of the architect, right? The design for individual homeowners, the community source design, facade, landscape, and the question of materials and local know-how, right? How do we produce architects who are able to do all of this together, right? And what we are trying to do at our school is I'm going to talk a bit about that now. Is that this school is the only school and the only architecture program in the country which produces or offers to its students what we call additional skills as minor concentrations, right? So for example, let's say you could do your B.Arch, but you could do a minor in something like infrastructure development in project management, right? Or let's say you could do a B.Arch with a minor in law and public policy, right? Or you could do a minor, a B.Arch with a minor in habitat or environmental studies, right? Or you could do a B.Arch with a minor in what's called small-scale sustainable design practices, right? So how does this really work at JSAA? All right, so let's take the first one. Let's say infrastructure design, right? So while you do a lot of our major courses at the JSAA, you will also take, which is we at the School of Architecture, you will end up taking courses in the School of Law. You will end up taking courses in the School of the Business. You will end up taking courses in the School of Government and Public Policy, right? Let's take another example. What if you do, you want to look at B.Arch with a minor concentration in law and public policy, right? So of course, you're going to take courses with us in the School of Architecture, but you'll again take courses in the School of Law, right? You will take courses in the School of Public Policy, but you'll also take courses in the School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, right? Another example for all of you, right? There's what if you did a B.Arch with a minor concentration in habitat and environmental studies. And we have recently opened the School of Environmental and Sustainability, right, at Jindal, right? So what you would do is you would take courses in the School of Architecture. Of course, that's your major curricula. You would also take courses in the School of Liberal Arts and Humanities. You would take courses in the School of Journalism and Communication, and you would also, so take courses in the School of Environment and Sustainability. All right. Let's look at one last example. All right, let's say you did a minor concentration in small-scale sustainable design practices. All right, then in that case, again, School of Architecture, obviously, School of Business, because you're talking about sustainability, you're talking about design practices. How do you do that, right? You would take something called JIBS, which is the Jindal Institute of Behavioral Sciences, right? You would also take courses in the Liberal Arts and Humanities School, right? So those are just examples for you to kind of think about. You see, what is it that we are trying to do? All right. So what you have in front of here is this very famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci, right? And what I've done is I've imposed a T on it. Okay. What we are trying to do, quite honestly, is create what's called a T-shaped architect graduate. This is actually a thing that was taken up by a friend of mine called Shoykot, who's written a lot about education and the kind of graduates we need across the world now. What does it mean by taking a T-shaped graduate, right? Shape T like that, okay? The long arm of the T, right? The vertical arm of the T is a major area of concentration, right? So that's for all of you who are interested in becoming architects. That's kind of the major area, right? The B.Arch program, major architecture program. But the short arm of the T is actually a horizontal expansion, right? It's a horizontal expansion that allows you as a graduate to reach out to other disciplines, right, constantly. Because as I said right at the beginning of this little presentation that I was giving to all of you, is something very simple. We cannot keep making our buildings, our parks, our cities, our colleges, our towns, our stations, whatever you want to call, all these things which make up the built environment, as an isolated phenomenon, because they are not. They are constantly governed by different systems of knowledge. Maybe the legal system of knowledge, maybe the policy system of knowledge, maybe the ecological system, the environmental system, the spatial system, the communicational system, the infrastructural system, right? So how do we produce architects who are able to plug into all of these systems and actually sort of become pivotal people, right? To be able to function in this extremely complex entity that is a building, that is our built environment, right? That's what we mean by this T-shaped architect graduates, right? So I will stop here, give you all a lot more, because I've thrown quite a few things at all of you, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of time to digest this and open up the floor to questions that you all may have, right? Azad, you can go ahead and ask people if they have questions, and I'm willing to take any kind of questions that they have.
Yes, so definitely, Mr. Reddy is on the line and is asking about the JSA as a placements.
Okay. So could you repeat his question verbatim,
So
Azad?
Mr. Reddy is asking a question. Do JSA has a placements? Do we offer a placements in B.Arch?
Okay. Mr. Reddy, let me thank you so much for your question. Let me try and answer that as well as I can. Architecture is very interesting. The course at JSA, I hope I gave you a bit of it, but there are a couple of other things that I did not tell you about the course. One of the strengths of this course that we have done is all our students work on live projects from day one. All right, let me give you an example. Our first year students right now are working on two projects. Well, they were working before we had the lockdown. They were working on two projects. One, they were designing actually with a client, a Katkatha studio in Chhatarpur in Delhi. Another group first-year students were working with an environmental journalist, Bahar, and redesigning her entire farmhouse as an eco-farm, right? Our second-year students are actually working on 2 live projects. One is that they are designing one of the largest green farmhouses under the supervision of the faculty for one of the biggest industrialists in the country. It's almost a 23,000 square feet project that they are doing. A second studio, they're actually redesigning one of India's green buildings and taking down what's called the environmental audit score of that, right? So one of the things that's very much prevalent in JSAA is that from year 1, students are actually getting live practice. The idea behind this is very simple. By the time our students graduate, they would have worked on enough projects with designers, with architects, with other planners, with city officials, so that we really don't even have to place them, quite honestly. They are already coming there with their jobs, number one. Number two, JGU, the university as a whole, has a placement cell, and JSA adheres to that. Third, the reason why I talked about this multiple and this what I call a T-shaped architectural graduate is that we are trying to place our students beyond the simple architectural office, right? Why is it that we are saying get a minor in something like public policy, right? So yeah, you will have your major in architecture, that's fine. But that's not the only kind of place we want you to apply. We want you to apply to something like the UNDP, right, which is the United Nations Development Project. We want you to apply to a place like the IFS, which is the International Financial School. Why? These are places which are now getting into the question of how do we use design thinking, systemic thinking to change our cities, to change the ecology, to change our environment, right? I hope that that answers your question.
So thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. There's another question that I just messaged you. Mr. Himanshi is asking, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Can you see that question that I just sent you?
Let me repeat that question. To make smart cities, smarter cities from time to time, what must be altered Himanshi, did you say? Himanshi, that's the brilliant thing, right? Everything, we can't leave any of it, right? And the problem really is this. Up until now, Himanshi, we have not done that. You know, when I was getting trained in India, right? I went to a school which was a standalone architecture school. All I did was, okay, materials and construction. I was, what should I say, almost outdated by the time I graduated, because the world had changed. In fact, the world has changed completely, right? Today, as I said, the building and our cities are fundamentally information systems, right? How do we, so if that is the case, every one of these layers that I talked about, right? All of them are information systems. And the idea is to figure out a kind of a networked growth of a student through them, right? That's why it's called systemic thinking. How do you do systemic thinking? How do you do network thinking? Working on all layers simultaneously, right? That's what's the most important thing to do. Right, Azad? Any other questions,
Yeah,
please?
100%, definitely. So Mr. Said is asking about the fee. Let me answer this question. The fee
Please.
that we charge for B.Arch program is rupees 4 lakh per year. Additionally, we charge rupees 2.4 lakh per year as a hostel fee because it's a fully residential university. So you must have to be in the campus all 24/7. So for the 5 years, you can calculate your own, but the charges, there are multiple scholarships available based on your merit, your performance year on year, as well as your performance in the interview. Once you submit your NATA score, we'll request you to submit the NATA score as soon as you get the result from Council of Architecture. Once we receive the result of NATA, we'll send you the invitation letter for the interview. Once you qualify the interview, we'll offer you the provisional admission and we'll be waiting for your 12th result. Yeah, so here I'm sending the detail about the fee in the chat. Dr. Chatterjee, there is one question one candidate is asking is, can I enroll based on JEE paper 2 score?
Yes, you can. Right now, we are accepting JE paper 2 scores, right? And all of the things that Azad said in terms of the applications hold the same, and there are scholarships and all of that available for that too. It's just that you fall in a, you are not competing against the NATA students. They have a different calculation, and the JE has a different calculation. Yes, both are accepted. Both are accepted. Absolutely.
We have dedicated 10 seats for JEE paper 2 candidates. In case, and then the percentage that we're taking, the marks especially, to be very specific, is 50% marks in your JEE2 result, along with your 50% marks in physics, chemistry, and maths. That should be aggregate. Dr. Chatterjee, there is a question from Mr. Himanshu again.
Okay.
That I'm just sending you on your chat board. Yeah.
All right. Is that the last question, right? Could you elaborate a little bit about the Mumbai Metro development? Yes, right now is in a decibel. How does the planning initiate? A good question, a very complex question. I'll try to simplify as much as possible for you. See, this is perfect, and a perfect case. Something like Metro is a perfect case of looking at. I was just saying at the layers of things that start about. So how does something like this start about, right? Of course, it comes as a policy decision, right? Oh, we need to do a metro. We need to figure out and look at something like what's called urban transportation, public urban transportation, right? Of course, now the question is it a part of the master plan? Most often than not, these things are not a part of the master plan. Let me give you an example of what happened in Delhi, because I know that scene a little better than I know about Mumbai. The first time the idea for a metro was floated in Delhi was in 1962. Do you know that? Right? It took so much of time, all the way till the 2000s, for the metro to become a reality. Why was this a problem? The issue, the problem was that because nobody ever actually put it in the master plan. So the transportation department never talked to the city planners, never talked to the municipality, never talked to the policies, never talked to finance, and as a result, what you saw was none of this was happening, right? It took 30, 40 years for that idea to become a fruition, right? How does it finally become a fruition? It's thanks to actually the efforts of some people who changed how the master plan was getting built. The master plan earlier used to be, new economists would get together and they would sit and make out the master plan. But what did they know about design? Almost nothing. All right. A few statisticians would get together and make the master plan, and policymakers would come together and make the master plan. Designers actually had no role to play on it, right? Very interestingly, this thing somewhere changes in the Delhi Master Plan 2020, and some of the people, very well-known people, Professor Menon being one of them, who were responsible for making this change, and they started initiating something called a local area development plan, LADP, all right, a local area development plan. What one started, so here the thing changed completely. You suddenly had a ground up way, right? From the ground up, you started getting information as to how, right? What is it that you needed from a design perspective, and therefore from a policy perspective, from a finance perspective, from an infrastructure perspective, and people started coming together, right? So now this is how it's working, right? In fact, the Bombay case and the entire Bombay development was kind of pushed forward by Charles Correa, right? Who you must know is an architect, right? So this, in a sense, is how it starts, and it's changing, right? And it's changing, and it's changing even more. Think about the smart city, right? The smart city, for example, that we are talking about, right? Again, there's a Center for Policy which came out with a report on the smart cities. This is a very interesting report. They turned around and said, oh, it's very nice that India is trying to do all of this, but do you have the people who can do it? And they did a study and they showed that what we don't have are the people who can manage it. Why? Again, because of the way we have been training them. So we have an engineer who will come and say, yeah, I can work on the sewage system, but they don't know how to work on policy and the legal system. We have an architect who will come and say, yeah, I can make the building for you, but I don't know ecology, I don't know infrastructure, I don't know transportation planning, I don't know law. No buildings can be made without legal codes, without legal understanding. There's fire safety, there is human safety, there's non-human safety, environment safety. None of these things people were getting trained in, right? What we are trying to do is really kind of switch all of that, right? And produce a kind of a graduate, who is at par with global standards, who's at par with how things are done elsewhere in the world. I mean, look at what's happening today. Just look around us, right? Why is it, do you think, that we have a lockdown? We have a lockdown because the health system, right? The public health system, which is a part of the built environment, right, is not adequately mapped onto the city so that people can understand and figure out real time what is happening where. We can't do it in our country. So what is we have like a, what's called, we have the big sword or the big hammer, lockdown, everybody stay inside. Well, that's a solution, but not the best solution, right? Why is it not the best solution? Because we don't know if this will contain it. We don't know that once we stop the lockdown, is it going to spread even more? Not only that, look at how the policymaker said lockdown. The policymaker did not realize that our cities are serviced by 85 to 90% of migrant labor, right? Now, the migrant labor is moving back to the villages, right? In a recent study, they said almost 4 out of every 10 who are moving back, again, because the transportation system was not planned accordingly, right? What we are going to see is a huge explosion of that, right? So this is the problem. We have to figure out how to do this properly, all right? Sorry, I tend to go off. You will realize that.
Thank you. Hope Mr. Manshu is able to get the answer. There's another candidate asking if he's saying that he's weak at drawings. Is it fine for B.Arch?
I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but whoever you are, hey, I was very weak in drawings. Don't worry so much about it. We train you in that. What we need you to be is somebody who likes to think systemically, somebody who likes to think in a network. Do you like to do things which are linked? Do you like to work in interfaces between different systems of knowledge? That's much more important than you being able to draw. So you see, the idea of drawing and architecture, that's one of those old ideas. Today we have, when you come into JSAA, we teach you something called Revit, which is like a building information modeling system. We teach you something called Rhino. We teach you ENVI, which is like a geographic information ecological system. Drawing is not, it's your ability to think, it's your ability to think in a network, systemic sense. I would say that's far, far more important.
Yeah, thank you. There's another candidate asking that we are going to spend at least 32 lakh rupees to pursue this course. How about getting the better opportunities in the salary package and all?
Yes, you do. You will. See, that's what the first person I'm forgetting, I think it was Mr. Maheshwari who asked me that question. Again, I don't know your name, but here's what I'm going to tell you. See, this is the other thing. One of the things that we are trying to do is expand the horizon of where you as an architect will work. Please understand this. Let me give you an example of one of our students. The student's name is Aryan. He's in the second year. All right. What is he doing? He is getting a minor in infrastructure and management, right? And where are the places he has already been working for? He after his first year, he actually went and worked with the National Highway Authority of India, right? Which architects don't go to places like that, right? But he did. That's where he did his summer, we have a summer internship even after the first year. That's what he went and did, right? Let me tell you, another of our students, right, who's working on this small scale sustainable design practices. He went and actually worked in a Garli, a village in Himachal, and is helping that community build something, right? So what we are trying to do is really, really expand the places where you can work. I don't get me wrong, and you can quote me on this. I don't want you to go and work in a traditional architectural office. I want you to go and work for the UNDP. I want you to go and work for the World Bank, because they are realizing how much they need designers who can understand how our cities are built, right? How our infrastructure is built, right? How systems are built. So those are the kinds of places we are saying that should be your aim, not to the small architectural office. Because let me tell you, that small architectural office is dying out. What is coming is something much bigger, right? We want you to go and work with the National Institute of Urban Affairs, right? We want you to go and work with TRIP. These are the kind of places we want you to go and work, right? So many of my students are going and working with CSE, which is the Center for Scientific Environments, right? They're architects, but they're going and working there, right? That's how we are trying to
Thank you.
expand our horizon.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. My question to you is on behalf of the students on the line.
Sure.
When exactly you start the, once a student enters into the foundation, which is common, I hope, for all
Yes.
these B.Arch and other programs in the design
Yes.
and architect, when exactly they start realizing how the industry works, when they go out in the field,
So,
when
like I
exactly
said,
this starts?
like I said, Azad, from day one, right? From day one. See, the idea is to do what's called design build projects. We are the only school again in the country which actually does design build projects. So the idea is that from day one, you get exposed to everything that's happening, right? You don't wait till second year, till third year, till fourth year, till fifth year in some cases to go and do this. Not at all. Not at all, right? Year one, day one, right? You start like that. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
Thank you. Of course, I'm waiting with some more questions. How our plans or projects are going to change behalf of this virus? Will they go through by decreasing what they get in it? Let
I'm sorry,
me.
I couldn't hear that very
Okay, I'm,
clearly.
I'm sending this question to
Yeah,
you.
can you
So
send it out to me?
yeah, here we go.
Okay. When you say decreasing, do you mean the scope of the projects? So let me tell you, this virus is going to change many things, right? It's going to change how we build we how we build our societies, how we build our cities, how we build almost anything. That's one thing that the world is realizing. We cannot go on consuming the way we are. We cannot go on producing the cities in an unsustainable the way that we are. You know, here's the interesting thing. Just do this. All right. This should be interesting for all of you. Go into Google and type in Delhi AQI, which is the air quality index. You will see Delhi's air quality index right now is 45. That is good. Do you know what is Delhi's air quality index on a regular basis? 750, which is actually that for WHO says you should not be out then more than half an hour in it, right? This look, we all are already living in pandemics. There's an environmental pandemic that's going on. We just don't realize it every day. But do you know how many people are actually dying because of respiratory illness every day? It's about 10 times more than the coronavirus. 10 times more than that, right? We just don't realize it, right? So everything, at least the one good thing, the silver lining here is that because of this, suddenly some things have become front and center, right? And people have to change how they are building. And I think people are, right? India is a little late to the party, but you know, better late than never.
Thank you. Of course, there's a candidate asking whether we approach students after not a result. Yes, of course, we will send you the invitation to come for the interview. We'll organize the interview physically in the campus. People staying around the NCR, uh, and all those out of Delhi NCR will request you to join us online through Skype or Zoom for your interview session. Based on your score, which is satisfactory, that should be 50% in your NATA. One
Yeah.
candidate, Shraddha, is asking whether,
Can I just add to that? I do want
yes,
to
of
say,
course.
I see how much, I see a question where somebody's like, how much do we need to get a better seat? Let me
Yeah,
explain it.
true.
The 50% and the 50% of your, those are eligibility criteria. Let me tell you, the clincher of the deal is really your interview with us, and you will be interviewed by a panel of people. You know, I would encourage all of you to actually go to our website and look at the faculty profile. You will realize that there's a wonderful bunch of faculty. You know, the kind of things that we are doing. This is just not in talk, but it's really the kind of faculty that we have. You know, let me, you know, I've talked a bit about myself. So, you know, I have my first PhD is in anthropology,
Sure.
my PhD is in architecture. But you know, we have somebody called Girish, whose first PhD is in this, geotechnical engineering, second PhD in law. Zai, whose first degree is in architecture and second degree is in gender studies. Sarovar, whose first undergraduate degree is in philosophy, but a PhD in architecture. Esther, you know, whose undergraduate degree is in literature, but her master's is in interiors and PhD in interiors. Right, Alok Karna, whose undergraduate is in architecture, but MA in policy and government studies and PhD in governance studies. You know, Wills, whose undergraduate is in architecture, MA in infrastructure technology and law, and a PhD in project and construction management. Right, so it's a very unique bunch of people from all over the world. Right, I was myself in the US teaching there for about 15 odd years, and most of the people from all over the world who've come together. And so for us, the main thing is really, after the eligibility criteria, is really the interview, right? The interview in which we kind of had a panel interview with you, and that really is the clincher, if I may say so. Sorry, Azad, you can go on.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, there is another candidate, Shraddha, asking how much we need to get a better seat, that you already answered. Of course,
Yes.
Himanshu again is asking, are you trying to say just like there are earthquake-proof buildings, we can also construct virus-proof buildings?
What we are saying is that, look, you have to understand, why do viruses and why do pandemics spread? They spread because systems don't talk to each other, right? Systems don't. The health system is not a standalone thing, right? The public's, that's why it's called the public health infrastructure, right? Right? How does a public health map onto a city? How is that then buttressed by the legal system or the police system? Each one of these are systems which work in conjunction with each other, right? Now, as an architect, if you don't know about all of these, right, if you don't know about the politics and the policies of where you are designing, the health system, the cultural system, how will you make a city that effectively integrates all of this? How will you make a building that effectively integrates all of this, right? How will you do it? That is how you prevent things, right? That is how you ensure that the best help is gotten to who, and the best kind of help is gotten to he or she who needs it, right? I want to answer that question, which is, regional languages or in English? Well, the mode of instruction is always English, yes. But of course, you do realize that in India, all of us are what is called the 3+1 or -1. So we all speak many, many languages. So of course, you know, there is a lot of instruction that goes on in different languages, true. But yes, the core instruction is always in English. The texts are in English, and you know, it goes on like that. But any other questions, Azad? You know,
What do you
Azad,
recommend?
I think you should also share an email with them. Sometimes if they want to have questions later, they should be able to write to you, to me, to whoever, right? And we are always there to answer your questions. In fact, I would request and ask all of you to go to the website, look at the faculty, read their profiles, and just click on the email and write to them directly if you have questions. Everybody will respond to you. Trust me on that.
Of course, I'm just mentioning my email ID and the mobile number here.
Sure.
Those who have any doubts, they can directly connect with me. I'll pass your questions to Dr. Chatterjee in case it is a technical. If it is admission related, you're most welcome to ask me directly whenever you feel comfortable. The campus will be again reopening after this lockdown is over. We hopefully the things will be sorted out. After that, you're most welcome to visit our campus by registering yourself. Just book your slot. We'll host you in the campus. You will be interacting with the dean, Professor Thomas Michael, Dr. Chatterjee, and the entire team at the campus.
I would really encourage all of you to do that. It's always nice to meet the people you want to work with, uh, us in this case, right? And it'll give you a sense to also meet with the students, right? And then you can kind of, really talk about, and they can talk a lot to you about this kind of an experience of this T-shaped learning that we are doing, right? What does it mean to do courses in the law school, right? As an architecture student, right? What does it mean to do a course in the sociology school, in the liberal arts school, or in the policy school, or even in the communication and journalism school? So, you come and talk to our students and they'll give you experiences. I think that'll be really, really helpful for all of you. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any other questions that we're waiting for your questions now? Meanwhile, Dr. Chatterjee, I just wanted to know, so those who just joined, I welcome them again. Why there are a lot of colleges in India where they're offering B.Arch. We are the youngest university in the country who has got the QS ranking. How do you think this helps? We also got the Institute of Eminence as very selective universities in India by Government of India. So how do you think the students, those who are joining now in 2021 and on, how do they benefit with these rankings and the status that we have?
Well, a couple of things, right? So one of the things about being an institution of eminence is that we are able to do this kind of an interesting coursework, which a lot of people are not, right? Because we are given that freedom now, right? So that's one of the biggest thing that happens, okay? Number two, what it also allows, and it is part of the mandate of the Institute of Eminence, is that we have to have a huge global connect, right? And go in for a lot of exchange programs and things like that, which also other schools, have many more limitations in terms of all of this, right? And the third thing, which really, really kind of helps is, look, whenever we used to, like I was telling earlier, I taught in the US for about 15 odd years, and I was teaching at Cornell for a while, which is the #1 program in the world. I was teaching at University of Cincinnati, which is the #2 program in the world, right? And, we used to get a lot of applicants from India, all right? And one of the things for us to always wonder was, are they from places which are already certified, right? You never know, right? It's always a kind of I'm giving you the insider story here. So, every time we used to go through like 200 applications or 300 applications for 30 seats or whatever in the master's program, or 15 seats at times. Sometimes we would see a really good student, okay? And we want to take this student, but we don't know where they are from. Have they been certified by any international agency, for example, right? Now, having like a QS ranking, which is one of the top rankings, as you know, Azad, really dispels those kind of doubts in the minds of those who are evaluating you, and that is a big, big, big relief in a sense, Yeah.
Thank you. There's a candidate asking, what is the scope of architecture?
Again, I'm sorry. I wish you guys would give me your names because I always like to talk to people one
So
on
this
one.
is Shraddha is asking, so what
Okay,
is the scope of architecture? Yeah.
Shraddha, as I said, the traditional scope, very less. But how the new scope, which is imagining architecture as this kind of a networked, systemic information modeling thing, is immense. Is immense. Let me give you an example. Let me give you, I'm sure where, I don't know which city you are in, but I'm sure you've heard of something called Uber, right? Do you know Uber was actually designed by an architect along with a friend who was an information architect? You see, this is what I'm trying to tell you. Expand your horizons completely. Do you know right now in the world who is the largest employer of architects? You'll be very surprised. It's the gaming industry. Do you know why? Think about any game that you play. It is always set in an environment. Who designs those? And the environment has to be as realistic as an environment outside. Who are the people who have this kind of knowledge? So what we are trying to tell you is, and we have a minor especially designed for that. It's called a minor in computational design, right? So you have to understand that the way forward is radically, radically different, right? And that's what we are trying to do at this school, right? So, and the scope for that is immense.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. Yeah.
One more thing I want to share with you. Let me share with you one more statistic, Shraddha. Do you know that in a developed country like UK, for example, or US, for example, there are almost 4.3 architects, designers per 100,000 people of the population. All right. In an undeveloped country like Nigeria, it's 1.2. In India, it is 0.3. We are one of the worst places in the world. So yeah, scope is immense. Don't worry about that.
Okay. I think this is the last question that we're going to take again from
Yeah.
Himanshu.
Okay.
I request Himanshu, you can connect with me
Yeah.
directly.
If you have all kinds of questions, don't worry, don't feel left out. You can always mail it in, and either Azad, if it's like Azad said, if it's a kind of an admission related question, he'll get back to you. But if it's more about the course, feel free to put it in there. Feel free to get in touch with faculty folks. Trust me on this. Get in touch with faculty. You will see how quickly they will respond and talk to you, and you'll get an answer to all your questions. So don't feel you're getting left out of that. Yeah. Sure. Right.
I
Sorry.
think we need to close this session now.
Yeah, we're already over
Dr.
time.
Chatterjee. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, all the audience there. My name is Azad Ali again. I'm the Director Admissions. I thank you, Dr. Chatterjee, who's a Vice Dean at and the Director for Undergraduate Programs at Jindal School of Art and Architecture. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much.
everybody. Himanshu will surely answer your questions offline.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your
Thank you
questions
so
and
much, everybody.
meeting you digitally. All right. Take care. Lovely talking to all of you. Take. Bye bye. Bye bye.